This is the morning after, and I didn't have a perfect night last night, so I thought today I'd go through some of the things that can go wrong when you're out on the hills camping, and what you can do to rectify things or stop them from happening in the first place. I'm not going to put these in any particular order because I'm going to start with the obvious. When you're up in the hills, the terrain can be quite tricky. You need to watch every single footstep. There's holes hidden in the long grass. You can slip off an edge. So if you slip or fall off one of these big rocks, it can be catastrophic. Should have pitched there, shouldn't I? So you've always got to keep your eye on where you're walking. I've fallen 2 or 3 times now and ripped a muscle in my leg, and it is not easy getting back to the car or home from this kind of terrain. The rescue helicopter was out last night, so that might have been for somebody who's done exactly that thing. So yesterday I uploaded a little video of the gear that I've packed for this trip. I checked the weather forecast, 10 degrees, so quite mild, with wind gusts between 15 and 25 mile an hour. So the tent that I brought with me is definitely up to the job in those conditions. But the quilt I've bought is rated to 0 degrees, and for some reason I felt the cold last night. Right to the bone actually. Really chilly for some reason. I also mentioned that I always bring this down jacket with me just in case, and I didn't think that I would need it, but I had to put it on in the middle of the night. If you're too cold, and especially if you're wet, you can get hypothermia, and that is quite dangerous, and you'll probably need medical assistance. Fortunately, it didn't materialise, but we were forecast fog for this morning, and if you're in this kind of environment and the fog sets in, it's very difficult to navigate or to find out where you're going. You can easily be walking around in circles for hours and hours, struggling to get off the hill. These tracks aren't too bad, but it's easy to wander off on one of these little tracks, usually animal tracks. Before you know it, you're lost. So it's really important to know how to navigate. I know people say don't rely on technology, but you can get maps and tracking services on your phone, which can be very, very useful. I use them all the time, to be honest. The better ones do have a paid subscription, but you can get them for free, and even Google Maps will do a job in a pinch. If something does go wrong, you might need to call for help, and you're not guaranteed to have a mobile phone signal in some of these places. I know that the Apple phones, not sure if some of the new Android ones do this as well, but you can connect to a satellite to call for emergency services. If you dial 112 from your phone, it will connect to emergency services even if it's not through your network. So if it can pick up a signal from a different network, it will do that. It'll also put the location on your phone, so they'll know where to come and rescue you. You can get these fancy devices. This one's a Zoleo, but Garmin do one as well, and Motorola. They allow you to connect with the satellites to send messages, so it doesn't have to be an emergency. You can just text the missus just to let you know that you're all right. They tend to have a subscription service as well though. It might sound obvious, but take some kind of first aid kit with you. Joe's sister, she takes a first aid kit literally everywhere she goes, so there's one in the car even if she goes to the supermarket. And it's surprising the amount of times it has to be called upon. Even if you just got the basics in it, like plasters and a bandage. You often get cuts and scrapes from tent pegs or scrambling up on rocks. This is the sort of thing that I end up slipping on most. Might be a soft landing, but it's really easy to tear a muscle or something. Cooking is another area where things can go wrong. When you play with fire, you tend to get burnt. I've been quite fortunate. I've not had any serious problems when it comes to using a stove, but every now and again you burn yourself on a hot pot. I've knocked over boiling water before. Fortunately, it wasn't in my tent and it didn't go over my leg or anything like that. But these kind of things are happening every day. There's also the risk of dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. So there have been cases where usually if someone's put a barbecue inside a larger tent and it films with deadly fumes, and people tragically die. But in really small spaces like a one-man tent, it's much easier to fill up with those fumes. You shouldn't be cooking in a zipped up tent. Always make sure you've got some kind of ventilation. So here's a good example how things can quickly change. That fog that should have been here at 5 o'clock this morning, it's starting to materialise. It's not too heavy at the moment, so I've still got good visibility. But if I couldn't see further than a couple of metres, this would be a totally different experience. It's still easy to make out the path over there, look. But I've been out before where you can't see a couple of metres in front of you. So even if you're just coming out for a hike on a nice day, you still should have a little backpack with a few emergency items in it. 9 times out of 10 you can get away with just your trainers and a t-shirt. But if something went wrong and you had to wait to be rescued, the very least you need is some waterproofs, something to keep you warm, maybe an emergency bothy or bivvy. I'll be honest, I don't always practice what I preach, and on short little hikes I don't always take those things, but that is my error. Don't make my mistake. This might not sound like an emergency, but if you are out here and suddenly you need the toilet really badly, you're in a whole lot of pain, aren't you? I've got a little toilet kit in my bag with a trowel so I can dig a hole, bury my waste. Don't leave dirty toilet paper or wipes that can blow about the hills. So if you're camping, it's a good idea to have a checklist to make sure that you don't forget anything. Something else that I'm not very good at, to be honest, I have got a list, but I don't use it all the time because I'm constantly switching my gear out. But because I don't have a list, I sometimes forget things. I've not forgotten anything important like a tent or a sleeping bag. It's usually, something trivial like a frying pan or a pillow, something like that. Takes a little bit of the comfort away, but it's not life-threatening. I'm going to make a bold statement and say that you can never trust the weather forecast. It's usually thereabouts, but you can get more wind than you expect, can be colder than you expect. So make sure your kit is suitable for the worst possible scenario. But even then, gear isn't indestructible. In my camping experience, I've had 3 tent pole breakages. I've had a sleeping pad that has deflated or burst on me. Need to watch where I'm walking. Practice what you preach, Paul. And I've had a couple of tents where I've literally been holding them up with my arm most of the night just because they've been flattened by the wind. Last night, for example, I should have pitched in a slightly less exposed area. Although the tent is up to the job, it just would have made a more comfortable night. So if you do have a kit malfunction, make sure you've got your repair kits with you. I always carry a couple of pole sleeves in case the poles break. So I've had to use them 3 times now. There is a video somewhere on my channel on how to use those. Also, patches for your sleeping pad. So if you get a puncture, it's usually quite easy to find out where that is and then just put the patch on. They usually come with your pad, but I also take some Gorilla tape and that does a job in a pinch. But if you've got a slow puncture, you can't always find where the leak is, especially if it's dark and it's windy and you're in a small tent. So it might be a case of inflating the pad again, wait for it to slowly go down, and then a couple of hours later you're out of puff. We've had quite a lot of rain lately. Usually that means you've got to dig the waterproofs out, but even then, sometimes when you get to camp you could be wet through. Make sure that you've got something dry to put on. Get out those wet clothes as soon as you can. Get something dry on and get in your sleeping bag to get your body temperature up to what it should be. If in doubt, take a bit more gear and spare clothes than you actually need. It's better to be safe than sorry. Make sure to let someone know where you're going. Plan your route. Tell the missus where you're going, tell your mates where you're going. More importantly, what time you expect to be home. And if you're not home by that time, they can send out the cavalry. make sure to factor in an extra couple of hours, because if you want to stop for a pint at the Nag's Head and the wife sends out the mountain rescue team while you're having a pint of moonshine or something, then that's not good, is it? But you get the point. If you've been out quite a bit longer than you should be, at least you've got somewhere to start if someone needs to come and find you. This might look like a walk in the park, and today in these conditions it is, but never underestimate places like Kinder Scout or places in the Lake District, because people do die up there. It looks pretty, but she can be quite vicious when she wants to be. It's just like being at home, isn't it? So to summarise, it's just common sense really. You know, make sure you know where you're going, and more importantly, how to get home. Make sure you've got the right equipment for the job and you know how to use it. And if it needs a little bit of TLC or repair, you've got the stuff to do that. Let people know where you're going and what time you're going to be back. If you've got something like a Garmin so you can contact people or call for help if needed, that's great. But other than that, save a little bit of battery in your phone, although it can be quite tempting to take videos and photos, can't it? Watch your step, don't burn your tent down. Just like being at home, you probably still have little accidents here and there. I'm 50-year-old and I still stick my finger through the toilet paper every now and again. But having an accident somewhere remote can be quite dangerous. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed all that doom and gloom. Make sure you get out there, but be careful. I'll see you next time.